Dr. Zara Velfani walked slowly through the empty halls of Station Nexus Prime. Her purple skin looked pale under the bright lights, and her forearms carried data tablets filled with research that nobody wanted to see. She had been living on this space station for 12 years now, trying to get someone to listen to her ideas about faster space travel. The station was huge, bigger than most cities back on her homeworld. Different alien species worked here together, or at least they tried to work together. The Kroleks were big and strong, with thick gray skin and muscles that could crush metal. The Zephyrians looked like living crystals that made musical sounds when they talked. The Mentari had large heads and could think faster than most computers. All of these species had power in the galaxy, and all of them ignored Zara. Zara belonged to the Velfani people. Once, her species had been many millions, across several worlds. They were peaceful, smart, and good at understanding how minds worked. But 50 years ago, a terrible war had killed most of them. Now only a few thousand Velfani were left alive in the whole galaxy. Nobody cared what they thought about anything anymore. She reached the big meeting room where the Galactic Science Council held their weekly talks. Through the glass doors, she could see the important delegates sitting around a massive table. Commander Torvik, the Kroleks who ran the station, was the biggest one there. His voice was so deep it made the walls shake when he spoke. Next to him sat Delegate Krikstal, a tall Zephyrian whose crystal body caught the light and threw rainbows across the room. The Mentari representative, Delegate Merton, had his huge eyes closed as he thought about complex problems Zara had asked to speak. At these meetings many times, usually they said no right away. Sometimes they let her talk for 5 minutes before they told her to stop. Today was one of the rare days when they had agreed to let her present her work. She walked into the room and felt all the eyes looking at her. Most of the looks were bored or annoyed. Some delegates kept working on their own projects while she set up her equipment. A few whispered to each other in their own languages, probably making jokes about the small purple alien who kept bothering them. Commander Torvik banged his huge fist on the table to get everyone's attention. The Velfani has 5 minutes to show us her research, he said in his booming voice. Then we move on to important business. Zara took a deep breath and activated her holographic display. Charts and equations filled the air above the table, showing her discoveries about consciousness and space travel. Honored delegates, she began, I have found a way to send messages across the galaxy instantly. No more waiting hours or days for signals to travel between star systems. This method uses the power of thinking minds to connect distant places. She explained how thoughts and awareness were not limited by normal space. If two minds could connect in the right way, they could share information faster than light could travel. The math was complex, but the idea was simple. Instead of sending radio waves or energy beams through space, consciousness itself could carry messages. The delegates listened with blank faces. Some looked at their own work instead of her presentation. Others yawned or checked the time. When she finished, the room was quiet for a moment. Delegate Krikstal made a sound like wind chimes, laughing. Velfani, your species has always been too interested in soft sciences like psychology. Real space travel needs real technology, not wishful thinking about mind powers. Commander Torvik nodded his massive head. The Kroleks people conquered space with strong ships and powerful engines. We do not waste time on impossible dreams. Even Delegate Merton, who was supposed to be the smartest one there, shook his head slowly. Dr. Velfani, consciousness is not a force that can be measured or controlled. Your mathematics may look impressive, but they are based on false assumptions. Zara felt her heart sinking. This was the same response she always got. But the test results show that minds can affect quantum particles across vast distances, she said quietly. I have documented proof that consciousness creates connections outside normal space and time. Proof that no major species has been able to reproduce, Commander Torvik rumbled. Perhaps the Velfani see patterns that do not really exist because you want them to be there. The meeting moved on to other topics. Zara packed up her equipment with shaking hands. 12 years of work, and they still treated her like a child telling fairy tales. She walked back to her small quarters, wondering if she should just give up and find some other way to spend her life. As she passed through the station's main corridor, she saw other Valfani going about their daily work. Most of them had taken simple jobs cleaning or maintaining equipment. They kept their heads down and tried not to bother the important species. Some of them looked at Zara with hope, knowing she was still trying to make their people matter again. That hope made her feel even worse when she failed. Back in her room, Zara stared at her research notes. Everything she had discovered made perfect sense to her. The equations worked, the theory was solid, and her small experiments had shown real results. But in a galaxy where only the strong and numerous had voices, being right was not enough. She needed someone powerful to believe in her work, and that seemed impossible to find. 3 days after Zara's latest failed presentation, something unusual happened at Station Nexus Prime. The docking bay alarms announced the arrival of a ship that rarely visited this part of space. The RSS Liberty had come from Earth, carrying the second human delegation to visit the station in over 10 years. Most species in the galaxy thought humans were curious but not very important. They had only joined the Galactic Council 50 years ago, which made them newcomers compared to civilizations that had been traveling space for thousands of years. Humans were not as strong as the Kroleks, not as smart as the Mentari, and did not live as long as the Zephyrians. They seemed to prefer staying in their own corner of the galaxy, trading peacefully and exploring slowly. Commander Torvik met the human ship at the docking bay with a small group of station officials. The humans who walked out of their ship looked very different from the usual diplomatic teams that visited Nexus Prime. Instead of dozens of delegates with fancy uniforms and ceremonial weapons, only 5 humans had come. They wore simple blue uniforms and carried basic equipment. Jake Morrison was a tall man with brown hair and kind eyes. He walked with confidence but did not try to look intimidating like most species leaders did. Behind him came Dr. Lisa Chang, a woman with black hair who kept looking around at everything with obvious interest. The other 3 humans were scientists and diplomats who seemed more excited than nervous about being on the station. "Welcome to Nexus Prime," Commander Torvik said in his deep voice. "We hope your visit will be profitable for both our peoples." "Captain," Morrison smiled and shook the commander's huge hand without fear. "Thank you for hosting us, Commander. We are here to learn about the amazing work being done on this station. Earth has heard great things about the research happening here." The formal tour began in the main science labs where the most important projects were being developed. Commander Torvik showed the humans new weapons technology, faster engines, and communication systems. The human delegation asked polite questions and took notes, but they seemed more interested in how different species worked together than in the technology itself. Dr. Chang kept noticing things that others missed. She watched how the various aliens interacted with each other, who spoke up in meetings and who stayed quiet. She saw that some species dominated conversations while others barely participated. As a scientist who studied different cultures, she found these patterns fascinating. After the official tour ended, the human delegation was given free time to explore the station on their own. While Captain Morrison and the diplomats attended formal dinners with the important delegates, Dr. Chang decided to visit the public areas where regular station residents spent their time. She found herself in a large observation deck that looked out at the stars. Most of the tables were empty since it was late in the station's day cycle, but in one corner she noticed a lone figure hunched over a collection of data tablets and research equipment. The being had purple skin and 4 arms, and seemed to be working very hard on something complex. Dr. Chang had always believed that the best discoveries often came from unexpected places. During her years studying different cultures on Earth, she had learned that brilliant ideas could come from anyone, regardless of their background or social status. Something about the isolated figure made her curious. She walked over slowly, not wanting to disturb the being's work. As she got closer, she could see complex mathematical equations floating in holographic displays above the tablets. The numbers and symbols looked incredibly advanced. dealing with concepts that seemed related to quantum physics and consciousness studies. "Excuse me," Dr. Chang said quietly in standard galactic language. "I hope I am not bothering you. I am Dr. Chang from the human delegation. Your research looks very interesting." The purple being looked up with surprise. Her large violet eyes showed shock, as if no one had spoken to her in a long time. "You wish to see my work?" she asked in a soft voice. "But I am only Valthani. My research has already been reviewed by the council." Dr. Chang sat down across from her without being invited. On Earth, this might have been rude, but something told her that this being needed someone to show genuine interest in her work. "I do not know what Valthani means in this context," she said honestly, "but I know good science when I see it. These equations are incredible. What are you working on?" The being, who introduced herself as Dr. Zara Valthani, seemed afraid to hope that someone might actually care about her discoveries. She began explaining her research slowly, expecting Dr. Chang to lose interest and walk away like everyone else did, but the human woman listened carefully, asked smart questions, and showed real excitement about the ideas. "You have discovered a way to use consciousness for instant communication across space," Dr. Chang asked after hearing the explanation. "This is revolutionary. Why has this not been implemented across the galaxy?" Zara's expression became sad and bitter. "Because no one listens to the Valthani anymore. We are a dying species with no political power. The major civilizations think our ideas are not worth considering." Dr. Chang felt a familiar anger rising in her chest. Throughout human history, great discoveries had often been ignored because of prejudice against their creators. Women scientists had been dismissed, researchers from poor countries had been overlooked, and brilliant minds had been wasted because society decided their voices did not matter. "How long have you been trying to get the council to accept your research?" Dr. Chang asked. 12 years, Zara replied quietly. "I have presented it many times, but they always find reasons to reject it. They say consciousness cannot be measured or controlled, that my species sees patterns that do not exist." Dr. Chang studied the equations more carefully. Her own background in physics and neuroscience helped her understand what Zara had accomplished. This was not wishful thinking or false patterns. This was genuine breakthrough science that could change how the entire galaxy communicated. "Dr. Valthani," she said firmly, "I need to contact my ship immediately. My colleagues need to see this work. Would you be willing to explain your discoveries to our science team?" For the first time in years, hope flickered in Zara's violet eyes. "You really think other humans would be interested in Valthani research?" "I think humans would be very interested in genius," Dr. Chang replied. "And that is exactly what this is." Dr. Chang contacted the RSS Liberty immediately after her conversation with Zara. Within an hour, the entire human science team had transported to the station and gathered around Zara's research table and the observation deck. Captain Morrison came as well, along with Dr. Ben Parker, their quantum physicist, and Dr. Amy Foster, their computer specialist. Zara had never experienced anything like this before. 5 humans sat around her table, studying her work with complete focus and asking detailed questions about every aspect of her discoveries. They did not dismiss her ideas or treat her like a member of an unimportant species. Instead, they engaged with her research as if she were a respected colleague. Dr. Parker examined the quantum consciousness equations with growing excitement. "This mathematical framework is brilliant," he said to the others. "She has solved problems that our best physicists on Earth have been struggling with for decades. Look at how she connects quantum entanglement with consciousness fields." Captain Morrison might not have been a scientist, but he understood the implications of what he was seeing. "Dr. Valthani, if this technology works the way your research suggests, it could revolutionize communication across the entire galaxy. Ships could stay in contact with their homeworlds instantly, no matter how far they traveled." Zara felt overwhelmed by their enthusiasm. "The theory is sound and my small tests have shown positive results," she said carefully. "But the Galactic Science Council has rejected it many times." They say consciousness cannot be used as a communication medium. Dr. Chang shook her head angrily. The council rejected it without proper review. They made their decision based on species prejudice, not scientific merit. The humans spent the next 4 hours going through every detail of Zara's research. They asked about her experimental methods, her mathematical proofs, and her theoretical framework. Each question showed that they truly understood the complexity and importance of her work. Dr. Foster was particularly interested in the practical applications. You have actually built working prototypes of the consciousness communication device? She asked. Zara nodded and pulled out a small crystalline device from her equipment case. This is a basic model that can connect two minds across short distances. The range is limited by the power source, but the connection is instantaneous. The humans examined the device with amazement. It was elegant in its simplicity, using bio-neural interfaces to connect with the user's consciousness and crystalline matrices to amplify and direct the mental energy. Unlike the massive communication arrays used by most galactic civilizations, Zara's device was small enough to hold in one hand. "Could we test this?" Captain Morrison asked. Zara hesitated. The device requires 2 users with compatible neural patterns. Most species cannot use Velthani consciousness technology because their minds work differently than ours. Dr. Chang volunteered immediately. "What do I need to do?" "Human neural patterns might be compatible," Zara said slowly. "Your species has shown remarkable adaptability to different technologies. But there could be risks." Dr. Parker stepped forward as well. "I will be the second test subject. If Dr. Chang experiences any problems, I can provide backup data." Zara showed them how to use the bio-neural interfaces. The devices looked like simple headbands with small crystals that touched the forehead. She explained that users needed to clear their minds and focus on the person they wanted to contact. Dr. Chang put on one of the interfaces and walked to the far end of the observation deck. About 100 meters away, Dr. Parker stayed at the table with the second device. Zara activated the consciousness amplifiers and monitored the connection strength on her equipment. "Now think clearly about wanting to communicate with Dr. Parker," Zara instructed. "Do not force the connection. Just allow your consciousness to reach out." Dr. Chang closed her eyes and focused. For a moment, nothing happened. Then suddenly she could feel Dr. Parker's presence in her mind as clearly as if he were standing next to her. She could sense his thoughts and emotions, and more importantly, she could share information with him instantly. "Ben, can you hear me?" she thought. "Loud and clear, Lisa," his mental voice replied immediately. "This is incredible. I can feel your thoughts as if they were my own." The other humans watched in amazement as the 2 scientists communicated silently across the room. Zara's equipment showed strong, stable connection readings. The consciousness link was working perfectly. Captain Morrison was the first to fully understand what they had witnessed. "Dr. Velthani, you have just demonstrated technology that makes our best communication systems look primitive. This could connect ships across solar systems, maybe even across the galaxy. The range can be extended with more powerful amplifiers." Zara explained, her confidence growing as she saw their genuine excitement. In theory, consciousness connections are not limited by distance because they exist outside normal spacetime. Dr. Chang removed her interface, still amazed by the experience. "I felt like our minds were touching directly. There was no delay, no interference, just pure communication." The implications struck all of them at once. Galactic civilization still relied on communication methods that took hours or days to send messages between star systems. Emergency calls for help often arrived too late, trade negotiations were slow and difficult, and families separated by space could barely stay in contact. Zara's technology could solve all of these problems instantly. Dr. Parker was already thinking about the technical challenges. "We would need to build networks of consciousness amplifiers, train operators to use the bio-neural interfaces, and develop protocols for managing multiple simultaneous connections." "All of that is possible," Zara said, her voice stronger than it had been in years. I have detailed plans for larger installations and training procedures, but I have never been able to get funding or support to build them. Captain Morrison stood up with determination. That is about to change, Dr. Velfani. Humanity recognizes genius when we see it, and we do not let prejudice stand in the way of progress. Dr. Chang smiled at Zara. Tomorrow we are going to request an emergency session with the Galactic Science Council. This time you will not be presenting alone. For the first time since arriving at Station Nexus Prime 12 years ago, Zara felt like someone actually believed in her work. The humans did not care that she was Velfani or that her species had no political power. They cared about the truth of her discoveries and the potential to help the entire galaxy. That night Zara hardly slept. Tomorrow would either validate 12 years of struggle or lead to another crushing disappointment. But for the first time, she had allies who understood the importance of her work and were willing to fight for it. The next morning, Captain Morrison requested an emergency session with the Galactic Science Council. Commander Torvik was surprised by the request since humans rarely involve themselves in council politics. Most species preferred to observe and learn rather than challenge established procedures. Captain Morrison, Commander Torvik rumbled as he arranged the meeting. What urgent matter requires the Council's immediate attention? We need to discuss Dr. Zara Velfani's research. On consciousness-driven communication, Morrison replied calmly. Humanity believes the Council has overlooked something extremely important, the massive Kralex commander frowned. The Velfani research has been properly reviewed many times. Surely your people have not traveled this far to waste our time with rejected proposals. Morrison kept his expression neutral, but his jaw tightened slightly. We have completed our own analysis of Dr. Velfani's work. We believe a mistake has been made. Within 2 hours, the council chamber was filled with delegates from the major galactic civilizations. Word had spread quickly that the humans planned to challenge the council's scientific authority, something that had never happened before in the station's history. Some delegates came out of curiosity, others out of annoyance at having their schedules disrupted. Commander Torvik called the session to order with his usual booming voice. The human delegation has requested this emergency meeting to discuss previously rejected research. Captain Morrison, you have 15 minutes to explain why this matter deserves our attention. Morrison stood confidently at the center of the chamber, with Dr. Chang and the human science team behind him. Zara sat in the observer section, trying to control her nervousness. She had never seen anyone challenge the council so directly. Honored delegates, Morrison began. Humanity has spent considerable time reviewing Dr. Zara Velfani's research on consciousness-driven faster-than-light communication. We believe this technology represents the most significant breakthrough in galactic communications in over a century. The reaction was immediate and hostile. Delegate Crystal's crystalline body rang with dismissive chimes. Captain Morrison, your species is new to galactic civilization. Perhaps you do not understand that the Velfani research has been thoroughly evaluated by experts from all major species. Evaluated by whom, exactly? Dr. Chang asked, stepping forward. Because our analysis suggests that no one actually took the time to understand the theoretical framework or examine the experimental results. Delegate Merton leaned forward with his massive head tilted in confusion. Dr. Chang, the consciousness-based communication theory violates several established principles of quantum physics. Consciousness cannot be used as a medium for information transfer across space. Dr. Parker joined the discussion with calm authority. Respectfully, Delegate Merton, those principles are based on incomplete understanding of consciousness and quantum mechanics. Dr. Velfani has identified connections between mind and quantum fields that our previous models did not account for. The chamber erupted in offended protests. Delegates chimed, growled, and chittered in their various languages, expressing outrage that newcomer humans would dare to question their scientific expertise. Commander Torvik slammed his massive fist on the table repeatedly to restore order. Humans, he rumbled angrily, you overstep your bounds. This council includes the greatest scientific minds in the galaxy. We do not make careless mistakes in evaluating research. Morrison remained calm despite the hostility surrounding him. Commander, we are not questioning your intelligence or dedication. We are questioning whether species prejudice may have prevented proper consideration of revolutionary ideas. The chamber fell completely silent. Even among the often brutal politics of galactic civilization, such direct accusations of prejudice were rarely voiced so openly. Several delegates rose from their seats in anger, while others stared at Morrison in shock. Delegate Crickstall's crystalline body flashed with angry red light. Captain Morrison, you have just accused this council of discrimination against member species. These are serious charges that require serious evidence. Then let us provide that evidence, Dr. Chang said firmly. She activated a holographic projector that filled the chamber with Zara's consciousness communication equations. Dr. Velthani has solved fundamental problems in quantum consciousness theory. Her mathematics are flawless, her experimental methodology is sound, and her results are reproducible. The delegates studied the floating equations with growing unease. Even those who had dismissed Zara's work before could see the elegance and complexity of her theoretical framework. The mathematics were far more advanced than anything they had given her. Credit for Dr. Foster stepped forward with a small device in her hands. Rather than debate theory, perhaps we should demonstrate practical results. The device was one of Zara's consciousness communication units, modified overnight by the human team to work with the council chamber systems. Dr. Foster placed it on the central table, where everyone could see it clearly. This device enables instantaneous communication across any distance using consciousness as the transmission medium, she explained. Dr. Chang and Dr. Parker tested it successfully yesterday. The connection was immediate, clear, and completely stable. Commander Torvik leaned forward to examine the device. It was small and simple compared to the massive communication arrays used throughout the galaxy. Impossible, he muttered. Communication across space requires physical transmission of signals. Consciousness cannot carry information outside the brain. Actually, it can, Zara said quietly as she stood up in the observer section. Her voice was stronger than it had been in years, supported by the confidence that someone finally believed in her work. Consciousness exists in quantum fields that transcend normal space-time limitations. When properly amplified and directed, conscious minds can establish instantaneous connections regardless of distance. Delegate Merton's large eyes widened as he studied the equations more carefully. The mathematical proofs appear to be correct, he admitted reluctantly. But the energy requirements for this type of quantum manipulation should be enormous. Only if you assume consciousness requires energy the same way physical processes do, Zara explained patiently. But consciousness appears to access quantum vacuum fluctuations directly, drawing power from the underlying structure of space itself. The theoretical implications hit the delegates slowly but powerfully. If Zara was correct, consciousness was not just a biological process confined to individual brains. It was a fundamental force that could interact with quantum fields across the entire universe. Dr. Chang seized the moment to drive home their point. For 12 years, Dr. Velthani has been presenting this breakthrough research to this council. For 12 years, you have dismissed it without proper consideration. Not because the science was flawed, but because you decided her species was not worth listening to. The chamber was quiet except for the humming of the station's life support systems. The delegates looked uncomfortable as they realized the truth of the accusation. They had rejected revolutionary technology because of their prejudices against a dying species with no political power. Captain Morrison delivered the final challenge. The question now is whether this council will continue to let prejudice block scientific progress, or whether you will finally give Dr. Velthani the recognition and support her work deserves. The weight of their mistake settled over the delegates like a heavy blanket. They had nearly lost access to technology that could transform galactic civilization, all because they had refused to take a Velthani scientist seriously. The silence in the council chamber stretched uncomfortably as delegates struggled with the reality of their situation. Commander Torvik was the first to break the quiet, his deep voice rumbling with barely controlled frustration. "If this technology is real," he said slowly, "then we need proof beyond mathematical equations and small demonstrations. Show us that consciousness communication can work across meaningful distances." Dr. Chang smiled confidently. "We prepared for that request, Commander." She nodded to Dr. Parker, who activated his personal communicator to contact the RSS Liberty. "This is Dr. Parker calling the Liberty. Please prepare for the consciousness communication test as planned." Captain Julie Stone's voice came through the communicator clearly. "Ready when you are, Ben. Dr. Martinez is standing by in our communications room." The human team had worked through the night to prepare this demonstration. Dr. Martinez, their ship's communication officer, was waiting aboard the Liberty with a modified version of Zara's consciousness device. The ship was currently docked at the far end of the station, nearly 10 kilometers away from the council chamber. Dr. Foster set up the demonstration equipment on the central table while Zara explained how the test would work. "Dr. Chang will establish a consciousness link with Dr. Martinez aboard your ship," she said to the delegates. "They will exchange complex mathematical sequences to prove that detailed information can be transmitted instantly." Delegate Crystal S. crystalline body flickered with skeptical light. "Even if this works across the station, it proves nothing about galactic range communication." "The distance is irrelevant," Zara replied patiently. "Consciousness connections exist outside normal space-time. 10 kilometers or 10,000 light-years makes no difference to the quantum fields involved." Dr. Chang put on the bio-neural interface and activated the consciousness amplifier. The device hummed quietly as it synchronized with her brain patterns and established connection protocols. Around the chamber, delegates leaned forward to watch more closely, their previous dismissive attitudes replaced by cautious curiosity. "Connecting now," Dr. Chang announced. She closed her eyes and focused her mind on reaching out across space to find Dr. Martinez's consciousness. For a moment, nothing happened. Then suddenly her face brightened with success. "Contact established," she said without opening her eyes. "Dr. Martinez, can you receive me clearly?" The delegates could not hear Martinez's response, but they could see from Dr. Chang's expression that communication was working perfectly. Her face showed the concentration of someone engaged in complex mental conversation. "Dr. Martinez is going to transmit a mathematical sequence," Dr. Chang announced to the chamber. "I will receive it through the consciousness link and repeat it aloud for verification." She paused, clearly listening to information being shared directly into her mind. Then she began speaking a long series of numbers and mathematical symbols that filled the air above the table in holographic display. The sequence was incredibly complex, involving quantum field equations and dimensional calculations that would have taken hours to transmit through normal communication channels. Dr. Foster contacted the Liberty through conventional means to verify the transmission. "Captain Stone, please confirm the mathematical sequence that Dr. Martinez just sent." Captain Stone's voice came through the communicator, reading the exact same sequence that Dr. Chang had just recited. Every number, every symbol, every complex equation matched perfectly. The consciousness communication had transmitted detailed technical information instantly across 10 kilometers with complete accuracy. The delegates stared at the matching sequences in stunned silence. This was not wishful thinking or theoretical possibility. This was working technology that performed exactly as Zara had claimed it would. Delegate Merton was the first to grasp the full implications. "The transmission speed was truly instantaneous," he said in amazement. "Normal communication signals would have taken several milliseconds to travel that distance. This showed no delay at all." "Because consciousness is not limited by the speed of light," Zara explained. "The quantum fields that carry conscious awareness exist everywhere simultaneously. Distance is meaningless to them." Commander Torvik studied the demonstration results with growing unease. As the station's commanding officer, he understood better than anyone how this technology could revolutionize space operations. Ships could maintain constant contact with their bases no matter how far they traveled. Emergency calls for help could be answered immediately. Complex military and commercial operations could be coordinated across vast distances in real time. What would be required to implement this technology on a galactic scale? He asked reluctantly. Dr. Parker stepped forward with technical specifications that the human team had prepared. We would need to establish consciousness amplifier networks at major population centers and space stations. The equipment is relatively simple to build and maintain. Training operators would take a few months at most. The cost would be minimal. Compared to current communication infrastructure, Dr. Foster added. No massive relay stations, no complex satellite networks, no enormous power requirements. Just small amplifier units and trained consciousness operators. Delegate Crystal was still struggling to accept what they had witnessed. Even if this technology works as demonstrated, implementing it would require cooperation from all major galactic civilizations. Such coordination has never been achieved before. Captain Morrison saw his opportunity and seized it immediately. That is exactly why humanity would like to propose a formal alliance with the Velthani people. We can provide the engineering, support, and political connections needed to make this technology available across the galaxy. The suggestion hit the chamber like a shock wave. Formal alliances between species were rare and politically significant. For humans to propose partnering with a dying species that other civilizations had been ignoring was unprecedented. Commander Torvik objected immediately. Captain Morrison, the Velthani are a declining species with limited resources and no significant political influence. Such an alliance would offer little benefit to humanity. Morrison's response became the moment that changed everything. His voice carried conviction that resonated through the chamber and would be remembered across the galaxy for generations. Commander Torvik, any species capable of producing minds like Dr. Velthani S is too valuable to lose. If the Velthani are declining, then it becomes our responsibility to ensure their knowledge and capabilities survive and flourish. Humanity judges our potential allies by their contributions to galactic civilization, not by their current political status. The delegates sat in stunned silence as they processed this radical concept. Morrison was suggesting that scientific brilliance and intellectual achievement mattered more than military strength or political power. He was proposing that the galaxy should value species for what they could discover and create, not for how many worlds they controlled. Dr. Chang stepped forward to support her captain. The Consciousness Communication Network will be called the Velthani Network. In honor of the people who discovered this breakthrough, Dr. Zara Velthani will lead the technical development, and humanity will provide whatever support she needs. Zara felt tears forming in her violet eyes as she realized what was happening. After 12 years of being ignored and dismissed, she was finally being recognized not just as a competent scientist, but as the leader of a galactic revolution in communication technology. The weeks following the emergency council session changed everything for Zara and the entire galaxy. News of the consciousness communication breakthrough spread rapidly through all the major civilizations, carried by the same slow communication networks that would soon become obsolete. The political ramifications were immediate and uncomfortable for many species. The Galactic Science Council faced harsh criticism for nearly losing revolutionary technology due to species prejudice. Several junior delegates who had supported Zara's research in private began speaking out about how established hierarchies had prevented proper scientific evaluation. Commander Torvik found himself in the difficult position of explaining to his superiors how a dying species had developed technology that could transform galactic civilization while living under his command for 12 years. The massive Krolex commander had to admit that his own prejudices had blinded him to genius working in plain sight, but the most significant changes happened in the relationship between humanity and the Velthani people. Captain Morrison kept his promise to establish a formal alliance, and within a month the first joint research facility was being constructed in the Liberty system. Halfway between Earth and the few remaining Velthani colonies, Zara found herself in a position she had never imagined possible. Instead of begging for 5 minutes to present her research, she was now the most sought-after scientist in the galaxy. Delegates who had ignored her for years suddenly wanted private meetings to discuss collaboration. Species that had never acknowledged Velfani existence began offering research, partnerships, and funding. The Consciousness Communication Technology, officially named the Velfani Network at Zara's insistence, progressed rapidly from laboratory demonstrations to practical implementation. Dr. Chang led the human engineering team that designed the large-scale amplifier systems, while Zara developed training protocols for consciousness operators from different species. The first major test of the network connected Earth with Station Nexus Prime, a distance of over 200 light-years. Traditional communication between those locations took months, even with the fastest signal relay systems. The consciousness link was established instantly. With perfect clarity and no signal degradation, Captain Morrison was in the Earth Control Center when the historic first transmission came through. Zara's mental voice reached him as clearly as if she were standing in the same room, despite the vast distance between them. Captain Morrison, this is Dr. Velfani calling from Nexus Prime. The network is functioning perfectly. We are making history today. Copy that, Dr. Velfani, Morrison replied through his own consciousness interface. History indeed. Your people should be very proud. The success of the long-range test opened the floodgates for network expansion. Within 6 months, consciousness amplifiers were being installed at major population centers throughout human and Velfani space. Other species began requesting access to the technology. Though they had to overcome their pride and formally acknowledge Velfani leadership of the project. The Mentari were the first major civilization to swallow their scientific pride and request network access. Delegate Merton personally traveled to the joint research facility to apologize to Zara for years of dismissive treatment. Dr. Velfani, he said, with his massive head bowed respectfully, the Mentari people have made a grievous error in judgment. We allowed arrogance to blind us to your remarkable achievements. We request the opportunity to contribute to the network expansion and learn from your discoveries. Zara graciously accepted the apology and welcomed Mentari participation in the project. She had learned from human examples of forgiveness and cooperation, choosing to focus on future progress rather than past grievances. The Zephyrians and even the proud Kroleks eventually joined the network as well, though their requests came with face-saving language about technical cooperation rather than admissions of previous mistakes. Zara and the human team accepted these diplomatic compromises, understanding that universal access to the technology mattered more than forcing apologies from proud species. More importantly, other Velfani scientists began emerging from obscurity across the galaxy. Inspired by Zara's success and protected by the Human Alliance, they started presenting their own research in fields ranging from biomedicine to quantum engineering. Many of their discoveries proved to be as revolutionary as consciousness communication, having been ignored for years due to species prejudice. Dr. Chang established a special program to identify and support overlooked scientists from minor species throughout the galaxy. Her team discovered brilliant researchers from dozens of civilizations who had been dismissed because their people lacked political power or military strength. Genius exists everywhere, Dr. Chang explained to a gathering of galactic leaders. But it often goes unrecognized because we judge ideas by their source rather than their merit. The Velfani network exists because one human delegation took the time to listen to someone everyone else ignored. The consciousness communication technology continued advancing beyond even Zara's original projections. Operators learned to transmit not just information but emotional states and sensory experiences. Artists began creating new forms of expression that could be shared directly from mind to mind. Diplomats found that consciousness links reduced misunderstandings and mistrust between species. 2 years after the first demonstration, the Velfani network connected over 300 worlds across the galaxy. Communication that had once taken months now happened instantly. Emergency response times improved dramatically, trade negotiations became more efficient, and families separated by space could maintain close relationships despite vast distances. Zara often returned to station Nexus Prime to visit the observation deck where Dr. Chang had first approached her research table. The same corner where she had sat alone and ignored for 12 years was now a memorial to the importance of recognizing overlooked genius. A simple plaque on the wall read, "In this place, Dr. Zara Velfani continued her research despite years of dismissal and prejudice." In this place, Dr. Lisa Shang chose to listen rather than ignore. Their meeting changed the galaxy forever. Remember that brilliance may sit quietly in corners waiting for someone to care enough to listen. Captain Morrison visited Zara during one of her trips to Nexus Prime. They stood together in the observation deck, looking out at ships from dozens of species docking peacefully at the station. "Do you ever regret staying here for so long?" Morrison asked. 12 years is a long time to keep trying when everyone said no. Zara smiled with contentment that had replaced the bitter frustration of her earlier years. "I learned something important from those 12 years, Captain. True discovery requires patience and persistence. But more importantly, I learned that there will always be people willing to listen to good ideas, even if you have to wait for them to arrive." Morrison nodded thoughtfully. "And we learned that some of the most important voices in the galaxy belong to people everyone else ignores. The Velfani network exists because we remembered to look beyond prejudice and politics to find the truth." As they watched ships departing for distant worlds, their crews connected to home through consciousness links that made the galaxy feel smaller and more unified, both knew they had witnessed something historically significant. Not just the development of revolutionary technology, but proof that cooperation and recognition could overcome prejudice and neglect. The story of Dr. Zara Velfani became required reading in human diplomatic training, a reminder that breakthrough discoveries often come from unexpected sources. It established a fundamental principle of human galactic policy: seek out the ignored voices, because they often carry the most important messages. Years later, when asked why humans had been the first to recognize Zara's genius, Dr. Chang would smile and give the same answer that became part of human diplomatic philosophy: "Maybe because we remember what it feels like to be underestimated. We know that brilliance does not always come with fanfare. Sometimes it sits quietly in corners, waiting for someone to care enough to listen."